So today is the 15th of Tevis, the 15th of So let's try to finish. Maybe we'll get it. Okay, so yesterday we talked about why it's from generation to generation. Two explanations. One from really generation to generation. That's going to figure in our understanding of Shmuel as the one who fixed this, who rectified what the angel did to Yaakov. And the other one was that from even in our own life, from generation to generation, from state to state, from Partzuf to Partzuf, in our own lives, Amalek attacks at that place. וזה סוד המלחמה עמו. וכבר ידעת עניין עבודת האדם, so I think we saw this already, שבהתערותא דלתתא התערותא דלעילא. So you already know, he says, that the way in which God set up the world is that when we awaken from below, it's as if he awakens from above. דהיינו באותה בחינה שאדם עובד השם, הוא מעורר כך למעלה. וכשעובד בבחינת אחוריים, דמוח שליט על הלב. So if a person is in a state of backside, back to back, where the mind is controlling the heart. Why do we call it backside? Because there's no mind in it. Because we don't know. Either you're too young to understand, or you simply don't know the reason, and you do things because you can control yourself. So if you're in that state, ועובד השם להיות שונה פרקו ביותר מרגילותו, כדאית בדברי רז"ל, and if in that state you go the extra mile, you do something extra. And what's the example that the sages gave? In Chagiga, the Achorai means that there's no mind, that there's no seichel. What?
You said the mind is over the heart.
Right. So the only way you can control yourself is not because of a reason. You don't have sense in you. You have control. It's just brute force that you can control the heart. Okay, you understand? There's two states. Either I control myself because I understand it's a good idea to control myself. Like somebody says to me, well, if you don't eat this cookie, you're going to get two later. Okay, and so if my seichel is enough, so I control myself. But if there's no reason, he just says to me, don't eat the cookie. I don't know why. It doesn't seem like I'm going to get anything later. There's no reason for it. There's no logical reason. There's no reward. So then it's only by brute force that I can control my cravings. Okay, so that's called Achoraim. That's the state of Achoraim. We said that's the state when we came out of Egypt, which is based purely on faith. And you only have faith. You have faith that this is the right thing, but you don't know why. It's like a child with his parent. The parent says do so and so. Okay, so he does it. He doesn't know why. He has no idea. That's called Achoraim. So in that state... so now he says, the example that the sages give is if the... going rate for something is X, and you want to go further, a little bit further. So the rate doesn't become X plus a little bit further, it becomes 2 times. They double it. So for instance, if you rent a car for a day, so they say, okay, so you pay $50 a day. Now you say, I need another hour. I need 25 hours instead of 24. Say, 25 hours, that's 2 days. It's 2 times.
You can really see it in Uber. No, you take a car.
Yeah.
Up to Kingston Eastern Parkway, it's $1. You cross the street.
Cross Eastern Parkway. It's a different zone. It's something entirely different. It goes by zones. The taxis, for sure, that's how they used to work, and Uber probably uses the same algorithm. That's what. By the way, that's Gabi's expertise. His expertise is the dial a ride. I don't remember what they call it. But it's an algorithm. He was one of the people that developed it. In any case, so now he says, the sages say, take from this and learn from this about learning. When you learn Torah, so if you're supposed to repeat things, how many times are you supposed to repeat things? So they say in their time, because they knew everything by heart, they repeated things 100 times. We repeat things once, twice, 3 times, if you're very tenacious. So it says, if you back then did 101 repetitions, the one extra repetition is like you did 200, because it's beyond the regular rate. It's beyond what's regular. So this only counts in a state of achoraim. This only makes sense if we're doing it by brute force. Why? Because if it's not by brute force, you understand why you're doing it one more time. Because you need it one more time. You understand. But here you're saying there's like a set rate. There's no one to talk to. There's nobody home. You can't. There's no logic behind it. It's just the fact that you went one over. It's as if you did twice as much. So that's the example of being in a state of achoraim. Repetitions are not adding. On the face of it, a real repetition, is not in order to understand better. It's to remember better. So it's achoraim. I'm not adding more mind. I'm adding brute force, hergel, a habit, to repeat what I learned in order to understand, to know it better. So, הרי זה מעורר גם כן למעלה להיות ייחוד זו נחור באחור. So what does this do above? It causes the Abba and Ima, the Zun here, the Zer and Pin and Nukva, the masculine and the feminine, to connect even though they're back to back. He says, when I'm in a state of being ba'achoraim, I don't have mind, so all the mitzvot that I do, all the things that I do, they are also backside. There's no kavanah in them. There's no understanding in them.
Which mitzvah is not achoraim?
What?
Which mitzvah is not?
No, if I'm doing things because I understand.
And with Avraham, you understand. That's the big thing.
Okay, so then it's not ba'achoraim. But if your father tells you something, and you disagree completely, but you say, "But Hashem said I have to respect him." I don't know why. I don't understand why. Or make it worse. What if your father is a criminal? Mom is a criminal. Literally, is in jail. And you go there and you respect him. So the mind says, why am I respecting this guy? He's not respectable. He doesn't deserve any respect. But I do it anyway because Hashem said so. So that's achoraim. Because I'm forcing my heart to go along with what Hashem said, even though my mind doesn't agree with it. But if you then learn the reason why you even do it then, and it made sense to you, so you're not achoraim, then you're facing Hashem. Because you understand why Hashem said that. You have some understanding. It doesn't mean that you know the reason. Maybe you don't know the reason. That's why we say that when the Mashiach comes, one of the things that will be revealed to us is deeper and deeper reasons for what we do. Because the whole state of Mashiach is being face to face with Hashem. So when you say that you're going to be face to face with Hashem, that means that you're going to have better understanding. By the way, going back to Ezekiel that we mentioned, Ezekiel 37 that we mentioned yesterday and sometimes before that, the Midbar Amim, this wilderness of the nations, and we said that yesterday that the Tzemach Tzedek explains it in the sense of omemot, not in the sense of amim, that it's because you're separate from Hashem that you're in the wilderness. That pasuk, I don't remember the pasuk by heart, but it ends with, when you come out of the wilderness of the nations, it's in order to bring you face to face with Hashem. Literally, I think it's the only time in Ezekiel that he mentions this phrase, face to face. Panim bepanim, because Ezekiel is all about the destruction of the temple. This is a big theme. And then finally, when he comes to the redemption, he says the whole redemption is to bring you face to face. What does it mean you'll be face to face with Hashem? So the meaning here is very simple. It's when you have an understanding, when you have mind involved, not just brute force, not just that you're doing things because of your heritage. So if you're in that state, this is what the Arizal means, that Zun, that Zer and Pin and Nukva, they unify, they unite in a state of back-to-back. In other words, every time that there's a couple that don't know why they're together, they may feel physical affection, but they don't feel that they're on the same wavelength. They don't, and they stick together. There are times like this in people's marriages, and they stick together anyway. Okay, so they're in a state of back-to-back. So you would think back-to-back's not worth anything. No, he says there's a unification that's called a chol bechol. It's a state of a chol bechol. You can't always have face-to-face. We wish you could always have face-to-face, but it's not the case. So if it's like that, then they're at least unify, al kol panim, velo yafridam Amalek. And so then Amalek cannot touch them. He says, then Amalek cannot get in between. Because what does it mean to be back to back? Remember, where does Amalek hit you? It hits you in the nape of the neck. So if you're back to back, so your necks are protecting one another.
And it's worse, Amalek go further.
So we were, in other words, once we went into the midbar, then we were susceptible.
Right? No, the midbar is being back to back. As long as you were still back to back, at the beginning we didn't have yet anything. That's when he attacked. There's a whole thing that Amalek attacks, and this is, by the way, it's very pertinent to today. Amalek attacks at the beginning of the wilderness and at the end of the wilderness. We mentioned this once.
Like before the Torah.
So before the Torah was given, and just before they came into Eretz Yisrael, there's another attack by Amalek. There it says the Knaani, because they hid themselves. For us, today, it's very clearly the Nazis. So the Nazis were before, right, before we came back into Eretz Yisrael. And now, just before the Geula, there's another attack, but this time they conceal themselves. They call themselves Canaanites or Philistines. Doesn't matter what they call themselves.
I mean, they're
But they're Nazis. In the end, they're Nazis. Doesn't matter. But they come at the beginning and at the end. So whether this is going to turn out to be the end or not, I hope it will. But it fits. The idea in a person's life is that before you've come back to back, the nape is not protected, and also when you're turning around to become face to face, you're again vulnerable.
But then if back to back, he can attack you. He can attack you in the front.
Yeah, you can attack you in the front, but the front is easy to protect against because you see him. His whole thing is that he attacks you in such a way that you can't protect yourself.
I think the biggest thing is in life is you learn from Amalek.
Okay.
Professional is.
He's a professional hitman.
Unbelievable. I call it anything what you do, you need to think what is he thinking.
But again, so in Chassidus, Amalek is simply the inability to control myself. That I can't exercise the power of the mind over the heart. That's what it means. Okay. וזה סוד ואוזניך תשמענה דבר מאחריך. So this is the meaning of a verse in Isaiah 30:21, that your ears will hear something coming from behind. Okay? So what do you mean? What do you mean? Your ears will hear something coming from behind? That the ears here are meant to the way that a person's ears are. His eyes are only facing forward. But the ears, they have surround sound. They can hear also from the back. If you have understanding, it's called ears. If you have a mind, and not just you do things because of heritage, because we're told to, but you have a mind, it's called having ears, having understanding. Shma, shmiya. V'oznecha tishmana means that when you have understanding, you don't have to fear Amalek anymore. Because we said the only time he can attack you is when you're in a state of being be'achoraim, that you yourself have no mind, that you have no understanding of what you're doing. You're just doing it because of you were commanded to. But the moment that you have understanding, your ears hear what's behind you. You're protected by your ears. So even though you're face to face now, you become face to face, you're still protected from behind, because that's what the mind that has understanding controls the heart completely. And there's no room for Amalek to even attack it. Okay. ואחר כך כשהגיע למעלת האהבה בתענוגים דפנים הנ"ל, מעורר גם כן למעלה ייחוד פנים בפנים. And afterwards, after you've turned around, this is coming into the good and wide land. It means you're panim bepanim, you have understanding now. So understanding causes you to have what's called ahava b'tanugim. And we said that this is the basis of the Tanya. That the whole Tanya is based on this progression from Egypt to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel. And these are the three types of love that he talks about in these three states, Egypt and the wilderness and Eretz Yisrael. The state of Eretz Yisrael is called ahava b'tanugim. Delight, love of delights. And what is the delight here? What is the pleasure at the Tanug? He explains in the Tanya, it's a love that you don't have to awaken every day. It's there all the time. It's a state of just, it's like what I keep saying, that the world's going to change, and suddenly everybody's going to feel godliness, and that's coming into the good and wide land. And then suddenly, you don't have to work on awakening your love. When do you work on awakening your love? When does Moshe Rabbeinu say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad? When does he give us this command to understand that God is one? He does this when we're in the wilderness, before we've come into the land of Israel. Why? Because in the wilderness, as a preparation for coming into the land of Israel, but it's in the wilderness still, you have to begin to understand. You have to begin to have understanding. If you have understanding, so what he's saying here, this understanding leads in the beginning to awakened love. The you awaken is called ahavat olam. It comes from meditating, shema, understanding. But when you finally come into Eretz Yisrael, into the good and wide land, it becomes ahava b'tanugim, delightful love. And then there's no need to awaken my love for Hashem. I'm in love with Hashem all the time. And love here doesn't mean like romantic love. It means that I have an affinity, I have a connection. I love the good. I can't have something else. I can't lead my life any other way. So if I'm still sinning in some way and I can't get over it and so on, so yeah, I'm still in the wilderness. But when I come into the good and wide land, that's called being a tzaddik. A tzaddik is someone who has ahava b'tanugim. He's in the good and wide land. That's what by the way, this was what the Tzemach Tzedek himself said. That they came to him in his time and asked him, should we move to the land of Israel? And he said, Machdo Eretz Yisrael. What do you mean, make here Eretz Yisrael? What do you mean, make here? How can I make here Eretz Yisrael? I meant in the figurative sense of Chassidus, it means become a tzaddik. And where you are is a good and wide land. Okay, so you're moving the essence of Eretz Yisrael to extend over the entire world. Okay, so let's end here, and God willing, we'll continue tomorrow.